To set up the game of Kingsburg, first place the game board in the center of the playing area. Next, locate the calendar track on the bottom of the game board. Place the season marker on the number 1 of the calendar track. And place the King's Envoy marker on the number 5 space on top of the crown. Next, locate the enemy stack. And divide the cards into 5 stacks by the number on the back of the card. Shuffle each stack and select 1 card from each stack. Make a pile of the 5 cards with the 1 card on the top and the 5 card on the bottom. And place these cards face down on the 8 space of the calendar track. Remove the remaining enemy's cards from the game without looking at them. Next, locate the year track, which is next to the calendar track, and place a marker on the 1 space. Now, set out the +2 tokens on this space of the game board. And separate the goods cubes and place them in their corresponding areas on the game board. Also, place the white dice to the side of the game board. After setting up the game board area, each player will set up their player area. First, each player will choose a color to play as and take all of the pieces that match that color. They will have 3 dice, 3 disc tokens, and 17 building tokens. They will also each get a province sheet. Each player will place one of their disc tokens on the 0 space of the soldier's chart, which is on the top left corner of the game board. They will place their second disc token in random order on the turn order chart. Each player's third disc token will be placed on the 0 space of the scoring track that runs along the side of the game board. After setting up the game board area and each player's area, the game is ready to begin. The game plays out over 5 rounds, with each round composed of 4 seasons. Spring is the first season of each round, and spring consists of 3 phases. The first phase of spring is Aid from the King. During this phase, players will count up the number of constructed buildings they have on their province board. The player with the least buildings on their board will gain an additional white die to roll later in the spring phase. If there is a tie for the fewest buildings, the tied player with the least number of goods cubes gets the die. If there is a tie for fewest buildings and fewest goods cubes, all tied players gain 1 good cube of their choice, and no one rolls the extra white die. Because of this rule, during the very first phase of the game, all players will be tied for least buildings, so each player in the game will gain 1 good of their choice. After completing Phase 1 of Spring, players move into Phase 2 of Spring, the first productive season. The first step is to roll dice and adjust the turn order. To complete this, all players will roll all of their dice at the same time. After all players have rolled, they adjust the turn order chart. The player who rolled the highest value will go to the last position, and the player who rolled the lowest position will go to the first position. If there is a tie, players will remain in their same order. As you can see here, green and blue rolled the same number. Green is ahead of blue because green was previously ahead of blue, and they remain in the same order in a tie. When the turn order is readjusted, all players should be in order from lowest to highest roll value. The second step of the productive season is to influence the king's advisors. In turn order, players will influence 1 advisor or pass their turn. When a player passes their turn, they are done with this step until the next productive season, so a player should only pass if they have no way to play their dice or if they are out of dice for the phase. To influence an advisor, place 1 or more of your dice onto an advisor's space. The dice you place must exactly equal the number of that advisor to place there. Each time a player influences an advisor, they must always include at least 1 of their colored die, so neither a white die nor a +2 token may be played alone on an advisor's space. Each player may add up to 1 +2 token to 1 or more die or dice group during the productive season. This will increase the value of their die roll by exactly 2. Only 1 player may influence each advisor, so if another player has already placed there, you must choose a different space. Players will continue placing 1 or more die in turn order until they have placed all of their die or have passed. In a 2-player game, there is one variation in the game. At the beginning of each productive season, First, roll 3 dice of an unused color. Add up the total and place those die on the exact number rolled. This space is now unable to be used by other players. Next, roll 2 more dice of a color not being used. Place those dice on the space that equal their total. This space is also blocked to the players for this round. If while rolling the 2 dice, their value equals the same amount as the 3 dice that were previously rolled, separate the 2 dice and place them on their 2 individual numbers. If the value of the 2 dice equals the 3 dice, and the individual value of each die is the same number, only place one of them and remove the other one. The third step of a productive season is to receive help from the advisors influenced in the previous step. This step occurs in ascending order, so it will start at 1 and proceed up to 18. Players will gain items from each advisor they influenced. The items they gain are shown on the top of each advisor's box. Advisors that have this symbol on the top give 1 victory point per symbol. These symbols give the corresponding goods cubes: gold, wood, or stone. The blue and white symbols shown here allow a player to recruit soldiers. When they do this, they move their marker on the soldier chart up 1 space per symbol. The pink symbol shown allows a player to secretly look at the top card of the enemy's deck. This is helpful because they will know how much soldier strength they need to beat the upcoming enemy. After they have looked at it, they will put it back face down in the pile. The green bag icon shown here allows a player to choose 1 goods cube of their choice. The die symbol shown here allows a player to take 1 + 2 token from the supply. A slash between items means a player must choose between one set of items or the other. An arrow between items means that a player can trade the item on the left for the items on the right. If there are multiple trade options available, such as this, a player will choose only one of the trade options. When players are gaining their benefits from the advisors they influenced, it should be noted that the supply of items is always unlimited. So if at any time any of the items run out, you may use a stand-in piece, such as a coin, to take its place. When all players have completed this step, they will remove all of their dice from the game board. Any +2 dice tokens that were used will be returned to the supply. The fourth step of the productive season is to construct buildings. In the current turn order, each player may construct 1 building on their province sheet. The cost of each building is shown in the circle. To construct a building, return the items equal to the cost of the building to the general supply, and place 1 of your building tokens over that building to show that it has been constructed. Some buildings are worth points when they are built. If they are worth points, they will have a number next to the red symbol in the center. After a player builds a building that is worth points, they will move their marker up that amount of points. While building buildings, there are a few rules to follow. First, the buildings must always be built in order of the row. So if you want to build a building, you must have already built any building to the left of the building in that row. You may build on as many rows as you wish, but you must always build buildings from left to right in a row. You may also only have 1 of each building at a time, so if you have 1 of your markers on a building, you may not build that building again. Finally, always make sure to read the description of the building in entirety. Each building offers a special ability during the game. After a player has completed the first productive season, they will move on to the third and final phase of spring, the King's Reward. During this phase, the 1 player with the most buildings built is rewarded with 1 bonus victory point. If there is a tie, all players are rewarded 1 victory point. After the King's Reward has been given, spring is over, and players will move into summer. Summer consists of 2 phases, Phase 4 and Phase 5. The fourth phase of the game is the second productive season. This happens exactly the same way as the first productive season happened, with players first rolling dice, next adjusting the turn order from the lowest die roll value to the highest die roll value, next placing their dice on advisors in turn order, then using the abilities of the advisors they placed on, and finally constructing 1 building if they are able. After completing the second productive season, players will move into the second part of summer, Phase 5, the King's Envoy. During the King's Envoy, the player with the fewest amount of buildings built on their province board gains the King's Envoy marker. If there is a tie for the fewest buildings, the tied player with the fewest goods gains the marker. And if there is still a tie, no player gains the marker. The King's Envoy marker will stay in a player's area until the next year when the King's Envoy marker is given out again. The player is only allowed to use the benefit of this piece one time while they have it, and once they use it, they return it to its place on the game board. The King's Envoy marker may be used for one of two purposes. First, they may use it to place on the same area another player has placed. The other possible way to use the King's Envoy marker is to be able to build 2 buildings during the build step. In order to use this benefit, a player must have enough resources to pay for both buildings they are building. After giving out the King's Envoy marker, summer is over, and players will move into autumn. The first phase of autumn is Phase 6, the third productive season. This is resolved in exactly the same way as all of the other productive seasons in spring and summer. When the third productive season is over, players will move into the second step of autumn, Phase 7, recruiting soldiers. This phase is a player's last chance to prepare for the upcoming battle in Phase 8. Each player may choose to pay any 2 of their goods to recruit 1 soldier. When they do this, they return their goods to the supply and move their marker up 1 space per soldier they purchased. When players are deciding whether or not to recruit soldiers, it should be noted that they can always look to the back of the enemy's card. The number on the bottom tells the range of strengths of the enemy. Their level on the soldier's chart must be equal to or greater than the strength of the enemy in order to avoid having negative effects. After all players have decided whether or not to recruit soldiers, they will move into winter, Phase 8, the battle. During the battle, the first thing to do is to turn over the top card of the enemy's deck. This is the enemy that each player must battle during this phase. After the card is drawn, the king will send his soldiers to help fight the enemy. To find out how many soldiers the king is sending, the first player in the turn order chart will roll 1 die. The value of the die is the number of soldiers sent by the king. Each player will move their marker up on the soldier's chart equal to the value of the die roll. Now, each player will compare their value on the soldier chart to the strength of the enemy. On the top of the card is the name of the enemy and its strength. If their value is greater than the enemy's strength, they won the battle. They will gain the item or items listed in the blue section of the card. These items will always be good cubes or victory points. If their value is equal to the enemy's strength, they just barely won, so they neither gain benefits nor suffer consequences. It should be noted that if a player has built the stone wall in their province sheet, they will win tied battles and gain the benefits in the blue section of the card. If a player's value is less than the enemy's strength, they lost the battle and suffer the losses listed on the enemy card in the red section of the card. They will lose all items displayed in the red section. If they do not have any of the items displayed, they will not lose anything for that item. For the red symbol, they will lose victory points, and for the building symbol, they will lose that amount of buildings from their province sheet. When a player is forced to destroy a building, they must always destroy one of their buildings from their highest numbered columns. If they have more than one building in their highest numbered column, they will always destroy the building closest to the top in that column. To show that the building has been destroyed, they will remove their building token from that building and move their scoring marker back that amount of points. They may rebuild the destroyed building later in a productive season if they pay the cost of the building again. When all players have battled the enemy, the player or players with the highest value on the soldier's chart will gain 1 victory point. When the battle is over, remove the enemy card from the game, and move all players' soldiers' markers back to the 0 space. At the end of the winter battle, the year is over and the next year will begin. To start the next year, move the marker of the year track down 1 space. If the marker is already at the 5th year, at the end of winter, the game ends. At the end of the game, the player with the most victory points is declared the winner. If there is a tie, the tied player with the most good cubes left at the end of the game is the winner. If there is still a tie, the tied player who built the most buildings wins. And if there is still a tie, the tied players share the win.